And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. On today's episode, we have a very special guest. This is JT, who's a former executive at Upper Deck. He's got a lot of knowledge when it comes to sports cards, but more importantly, where it's interesting to me, and especially for a channel like this, is he has a lot of information when it comes to like printer capabilities, distribution, and really a lot of like the higher level stuff that on this channel we do a lot of speculating. And I said it a million times in the past before. Channels like this, we are very lucky because we get to speculate. But he's going to be able to actually give us like some real true insight. And especially when it talks about, like I said, that printing, that rarity, that scarcity factor, because really in sports cards, there is that more artificial rarity and scarcity, especially when it comes to like 1 out of 10 cards, 1 out of 25, one of ones that is that built-in artificial scarcity. So JT, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to my listeners out there and just tell them a little bit about yourself and how did you end up working for Upper Deck in the first place?
Yeah, hey everybody out there. My name's JT Strasnick. A little off out of my realm here. I'm a sports guy, but nothing wrong with a little Pokemon chat every now and again. So a lifelong collector. Grew up, right into the local CVS, picking up some packs. Northeastern kid. Yeah, it all started with that, and just kind of a lot of hand-me-down sets and stuff, and I always stayed active in the hobby, kept my nose in those Beckett magazines. And, as I grew up, got older, went out into the workforce. And then one day I decided, hey, I'm shooting my shot, putting my resume out to Upper Deck. And just so happens they had an opening for a product manager. And I ended up interviewing with Grant Sandground, who is the director of product development at Upper Deck. And he had been working at Beckett Media for a long time, and he had a lot of involvement with the content of those Beckett price guides. And I had been reading those, cover to cover for as a kid from 10 years old to into my teens. So it was really cool to then interview with him, and we hit it off right away. He's a brilliant guy in the sports trading card industry, and it all worked out. We vibed right away, and they flew me out to Southern California. I started working for Upper Deck, and it's kind of a trial by fire there. They just throw you right in, or baptism by fire, I guess you should say.
Yeah, and I'm from that like old school mindset. I'm definitely like that sink or swim type of person, especially when it comes to obviously Pokemon is not my full-time job, but when it comes to my full-time job, I am all about that sink or swim mentality, especially when it comes to the workforce. But so when you first started at Upper Deck, what were you doing? Because I know by the time you decided to go do your own consultant and become, I guess, more or less a full-time investor in sports cards, before you got to that point, where did you start from? I know you got to the point where you were pretty much flying across the country to different printing facilities, to a lot of your warehouses, doing a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff, meeting a lot of athletes, stuff like that. And there's a lot of questions I want to ask you, put it that way, especially like I said, when it comes to the printing and more like the logistics, because I think that's where it's really going to relate really good for Pokemon. But so like what did you first start when you first started there? What were you doing?
So first of all, just let me say, whether you're working for a sports trading card company or some of those other TCG companies, a peek behind the scenes, like from going from a collector to a peek behind the actual curtain and how the mechanism works, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And it was an unbelievable experience. When I started at Upper Deck, I started as a product manager, and you're creating products, you're configuring them mathematically, you're giving them an identity, and then you're actually very heavily involved. And me particularly, I took a lot of responsibility on that part because I just liked it a lot. Was the design aspect. So you're essentially working with designers to create your vision of what you want cards to look like. and it was absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, I got to work on some of the most iconic brands for me that I grew up, in the sports world. SPX, SP Authentic, SP Game Used. Those are iconic brands. So it was cool to be able to work on stuff like that. But just I started off with actually some things that I wasn't familiar with. I started off with CFL football. I started off with Euro League basketball. Because I was a new kid on the block, so I had to pick up some of the scraps. But it was cool to learn those markets and learn those sports and just really get into it, and then create cool cards. And again, I said I was very into the design. I love creating designs. I'm not as into the computer aspect and actual design portfolio, and I don't have the educational background, but I have the mind for it. And it was awesome to work one-on-one with designers, and it's awesome to see your work come out and actually be printed. But yeah, as you were saying, John, like I was flying across the country for so many different events, and different, just job functions. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is how much actually goes into making a trading card.
Yeah. So so before we go too far in, he does have some non-disclosure agreements that he signed when he started, before he left. So there's some stuff he can't really talk about. But I gotta ask you, can you tell us a little bit about, because obviously sports cards, there's the jersey inserts that are built into the card, something very different than we have in Pokemon. But you've told me some stories about that warehouse. I don't know what you could actually tell on the live stream versus what we've talked about in private, but you have some wild stories there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to our upper deck warehouse, and just the sheer amount of memorabilia and stuff, it's pretty cool to see. And I mean, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. I don't want to detail too much of the bad because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But honestly, it's cool to see and be a part of the packaging and stuff. I mean, you get to unveil, some cool Michael Jordan autograph cards. But even for what I was doing, making hockey cards, it was cool to see the production team actually cut down a full-size hockey jersey and how they go through that process. And then how it gets cut into little chunks is pretty wild. It's not, just a person sitting there with scissors. It's a larger press that presses down these, they attach large chunks of jerseys to double-sided tape, essentially. And they put them on these big presses that punch out these smaller pieces. It's a pretty cool process. And then from there, to see it go to the manufacturer, where it's a huge assembly line, and you have these individuals putting, individual small pieces into cards that aren't even identified, because the way the printing process goes, you have a top sheet, you have a back sheet, and then you have a filler layer in the middle, especially for game used cards. And in that filler layer, they die cut out an area so that the swatch will lay nicely in the card. And essentially, when the workers on this assembly line in the manufacturing process get to the point where they have to put in the memorabilia swatch, a lot of times they're looking at a card without the top sheet. So they don't necessarily know what card that is.
Sure.
And from a manufacturing standpoint, they don't necessarily always care, as long as, the manufacturer has given the proper directions to carry out. But I think that's why it's not uncommon to see in the sports world where you have errors of, wrong patch swatches, wrong colored jersey swatches. That happens very commonly, and it's a very small percentage of the cards you see, but it does happen now and again. But wild process that the manufacturing facilities, it blows your mind just from a printing standpoint. I mean, the first time I saw it, and I was talking to the operator of it, he was telling me it was shipped in on a boat in like 10 different pieces from Germany. And it was just this absolutely massive, over 100 yards long, a massive printer. And its capabilities were just unbelievable because you're talking about, hundreds of thousands of sheets of cards.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty wild process, and the machinery and the technical precision that goes into making these things, it's pretty astounding. It's absolutely blows your mind.
And it's funny you say that because, as the hobby, as the collecting community as a whole, we've definitely said, moved really into that print quality, right? And especially when it comes to grading cards. And for sports cards, understand it is definitely more on the high end. And that's something I want to talk to you a little bit too about is, for the Pokemon hobby and for what you're doing now is the more consultant aspect. For Pokemon, it is, for me, I always look for cards that I consider like undervalued cards that I think people will eventually move themselves to those cards in the future in the market. But I do struggle with sports cards with just the whole thought of speculating because, for Pokemon, Charizard's not going to pull his ACL. He's not going to have a career-ending injury.
Right.
Like Charizard's going to be around for mine and your lifetime, and he's going to outlive us all.
Absolutely.
Now, for sports cards, especially when it comes to rookie cards, this is why I don't do sports, is because of that speculating. Like, how do you mitigate risk for a brand new rookie? Yeah, sure, the upside and the potential for these guys could be crazy, but another thing about Pokemon too is we don't have a ton of high end cards, and yes, like we have Charizard first edition, $200,000+, some trophy cards. But even like our more high end ish cards, like some of our gold stars, these are floating between $4,000 and $10,000. You could be talking about rookie players hitting six figures for their first card. Like, how do you navigate that market?
Yeah. Well, and to be fair on that, that's kind of new territory for a lot of the sports market too, because we haven't seen, especially for rookie cards, um, like for example, basketball. You take a look at, like Giannis, who started after Steph Curry, and some of his high-end rookie cards are selling for more than Steph Curry, but like not now, considering he just broke an unbelievable three-point record. But I think the point is that there was a little bit of a boom within the last couple years that sent all these cards into another hemisphere or stratosphere. I'm sorry. And for the sports card market, it's always been kind of based upon. There's multiple factors. You obviously have the player performance and obviously their longevity, but it also plays into the individual market, right? So if you have, let's say, the Cleveland Browns versus the New York Giants, the New York sports market has a way better, just collector core and more eyes on it, more marketability than say the Cleveland Browns. So if you have a highly touted number one overall pick in New York City, his collectability in that market has the opportunity to surpass what it would have been if he was in, say, Cleveland.
Now, when you were working at Upper Deck, were they like, I mean, we talk about this all the time, especially when it comes to Pokemon, is Pokemon International is not stupid. They understand the demand. Yeah, they release some like cryptic tweets and Pokemon stuff like this. Now, for you, for Upper Deck, and you were living in it from the more corporate aspect, like you have to be aware of what's going on in the market, right? Like you have to understand the value the cards you're creating are having. Like how much of an impact did the prices impact like the decision maker at that high level?
So a little bit of clarity on that. Like it wasn't. So a lot of the price increases that you saw on the for sealed product happened in the secondary market. A lot of MSRPs were set fairly normally, and it's kind of that secondary market that exploded them. But from that standpoint, when we're creating products, and especially in accordance with your resources, In being in the sports world, you're talking about limited autograph quantities or certain amount of game used jersey pieces or memorabilia swatches or whatever the case may be. And you have to be a little more strategic and say, okay, we're using some of these assets to go into this high-end product versus these assets, which will go into the mid-tier products. And then we're going to kind of use everything else and make sure that our lower-end products still have viability.
So let me ask you a question about higher end product, because for Pokemon, we don't have that many high end products. Yeah, we have like some premium collection boxes that come out, but we're talking MSRP prices of $119. And yeah, like booster boxes, yeah, they sell for a little bit more, but with the big caveat is that booster boxes aren't really made for the average collector. They're really made to be sold, per, crack a booster box, sell it per pack. Now, in the sports card market, your high-end products, you could be talking 5 figures for some of this stuff. Like, I think that's where the drastic difference is for sports and Pokemon is that huge leap, because, I'm sure you guys had pretty low-end products and I'm guessing that a lot of that has to do with the pull rates or the guaranteed for those signature cards or the game used jersey cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, there's also a lot of specifics within that. There may be memorabilia, which is game worn versus memorabilia that's just player worn. And the difference in that is like, if I was a professional athlete that was going to have my own card and a representative from the company came and said, okay, put on this jersey for a photo shoot, that's player worn. That's not game worn. So it's much easier to attain some of those player worn, jerseys than it would be a game worn. So it's stuff like that. And, your game worn aspects may end up in a higher end product than some of your, player worn. But even autograph, you have autographs on the label. There's those holographic labels versus on the actual card. And that's a whole process in itself. Attaining on-card autographs of athletes is a very arduous task, and it takes a long time. So that's why you may see a product, slated for like a January release, and it slides all the way to February or March.
Well, so let me ask you, because one of the questions in the chat is actually a great chat from Chavals. Now, he said, so a problem we're running into very recently in the Pokemon hobby is we're seeing a lot of leaks for cards come out really early. And especially just today, the day of recording this video, we saw that Charizard V alternative art. It's like this super awesome card. Talk about a card that for our hobby is going to have extremely high expected values, probably going to be like one of the higher end price wise for modern cards we've seen in the last couple of years. And anytime you have alternative arts in our hobby now, like I said, we're having a lot of leaks come out, and there's a lot of speculation of where those leaks are coming from. Is it coming from the distribution centers, or is it coming from the actual printing facilities? Now, in your time at Upper Deck, did you have any of those leaks happen? And how would you guys handle stuff like that? And were you seeing it happen at the printing facilities or distribution or what?
So I can't really talk about, or as much as you guys like to speculate, I'm not going to speculate into the Pokemon situation and what's exactly being leaked there. I mean, honestly, from my perspective, those facilities were fairly secure, and they've already encountered issues in the past where people have tried to do some shady stuff and take cards out. And it was not only the trading card manufacturer that, sought out and, took care of that fraudulent activity, but it was also the printing facility that had the cameras and had the building that, kind of oversaw and were able to nip that in the butt. But there definitely has been instances. I mean, if you look from some of the, I want to say earlier 2000s, you saw some what they call test sheets of certain cards, or maybe an uncut sheet, and there's stuff like that has gotten out there that definitely shouldn't be. from what I've seen, most of it doesn't have crazy resale value. As far as new content though, what we always did, or what a lot of the card companies do, is after the cards are printed and before they're packaged, they'll have the opportunity to like quality check a lot of the run. And involved in that is they'll actually pick out some key cards and take pictures of them and use that as marketing content to leak out, maybe a few weeks or a month prior to the actual release.
Leaking out your own cards?
Absolutely, because you got to get hyped. You got to get people hyped. Because here's the thing: before the product is actually released, you have a checklist. So before anybody has the opportunity to even open that, they know what the contents could be.
Yeah.
Though it's randomly, assigned, like they know what the contents could be. So by taking some of your some of your really cool cards and showcasing them a month or a few weeks before the actual release, it draws in that hype, right away, and it gives people a sneak peek at what they're going to get before they actually open.
So we definitely have that too. We have like one of our websites, Poke Beach, always does real early releases, but some of the stuff we're seeing happen right now is like super early, and especially so Pokemon is probably a little different in the sports card market, because when you're talking about sports cards, you're mainly talking about English only cards, right? Where in Pokemon in the market, a lot of these cards are released first in Japanese sets, and then eventually we get them released later in English. That's usually like a few months lag time. So some of these leaks we're seeing like very recently are definitely like more of the this shouldn't be out there kind of stuff. So
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. That's one thing that I was kind of taken back by, is as much positive as I pulled from my whole experience as a collector and then actually behind the curtain working in it. I do have to say that you're going to find shadiness in every path all the way to the top. You have to be one of the people that aren't shady about it, but there's executives in companies, there's presidents in companies that do some shady stuff. But that's unfortunately the black eye of the collectible industry.
yeah.
And until we get some good business minded people that are, to team up with some of those collectible minded people to run legitimate companies the right way.
So now on this channel, like I said, we take a lot of liberties, do a lot of speculation. But another thing we talk about a lot is manipulation, because in the Pokemon hobby, it is an extremely manipulated market. And I've talked about some different examples on the channel now. So this is a weird thing about manipulation in the Pokemon hobby, is the people that are in the know, who understand what's going on. There's no disputing the manipulation that's happening. Like, we agree on it. Some of us may or may not have been involved in manipulation in the past, so we understand it on different scales, and we have a lot of different examples. But then we'll have a very large subsection of the Pokemon collecting hobby, and I don't know if it's so much the undereducated collector, or if it's a lot of just the collector that doesn't care. And a lot of that is paying the very highest end of that secondary market prices, knowing that there will be eventual retraces, stuff like this. People that are it's almost like that blind ignorance. But with that said, I feel Pokemon, for a lot of us, especially viewers of this channel, we are able to navigate a little bit of that manipulation. Now, on a high end for sports cards, when you could be talking 6 figures for not just one Charizard first edition, but a huge cross section of different cards from both modern, vintage, how do you navigate the manipulation that is the sports card market?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to answer, because it's rampant. It's running rampant right now. And I think you made a good point, is that there's kind of 2 different types. There's a lot of new money that's influxed into the collectible industry over the past couple of years, and a lot of that new money didn't really know where to spend it. They just wanted to be in, and I think there were some key individuals that saw the opportunity to take advantage of those people and create these, all kinds of breaker groups or investing groups or whatever you want to call them, and say, hey, you know what? Give me some of your money. We're going after all these rookie cards or all these high-end cards, and we're going to hope the market hits right. But there's a lot of levels to it, and then you get also into the manipulation of graded cards, which I know you want to talk about. But I mean, yeah, it's really, I think part of it is that you have to follow your own gut sometimes. Like if you have a certain, or your heart, gut or heart, one and the same sometimes. But like if you have a certain rookie that you just like, or a certain rookie that you think is gonna be good, go collect his cards. Like if you have a rookie in Major League Baseball, and he lives 3 doors down from you, and he's a nice guy, go collect his cards, because you want to collect his cards. Go for it. It doesn't necessarily always have to be about it has a huge price tag at the end of the day. But then again, if you want to be on the better side of it, where you get in early and you get a key rookie card and it blows up, well, then just go after, you have to be smart enough to say, okay, I think this individual is going to be good, or I think this individual is going to be, in a positive light in the media for the next decade, and have really good stats. Go get his rookie cards. And
so I just want to go back a little bit what you said earlier. So you talked about like the pack breaker and the invest in of much, but that's where that line got blurred a little bit. The market was super manipulated in the fact that these breakers were not just selling this product at a much higher secondary market price, but then also selling it as an investment. Now, and this is one of the things I explain on this channel, I talk about all the time, is I talk about price points. What's the price point you get into product? Right now, with the retrace we're seeing in the hobby, I'm seeing a lot of like really attractive price points, and price points that we always thought maybe we can get back to, but not as fast as we got back to them. We went for a lot of like newer modern product booster boxes. We went from like 170 to $80 in the matter of just a couple months, and all it took was a little bit of that extra printing capabilities from Pokemon. Now, I am curious, like, because I understand that you said you had a lot of relationships with these pack breakers. You would actually go on to their lives and represent the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely much different than we see here. Like the pack breakers and the rippers and flippers out there, with the exception of like absolutely huge content creators, which will get like some free perks from Pokemon, but never are they actively engaging with that breaker, that content creators community.
Yeah.
Now, you guys would actually go into those chats.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of we. Let me start by saying we had a pretty good relationship with most of our, distributors, and some key relationship with breakers too. And some of it was good and some of it was bad, in the sense that you don't want to get into the pattern of building products specifically for breakers, because then it kind of takes it away from the joy of everybody else who's trying to open in the product. But a lot of these larger group breakers, just incredible insight, incredible knowledge on the collectibles industry. And when they also had the most eyes. Like in my case, I worked specifically on hockey products, and we were talking to distributors that supplied the majority of Canada. And can I name drop a couple of big breakers? That
Do whatever you can.
Goodwin Champions, he's absolutely fantastic guy. Jeff over at Goodwin Champions. I grew up watching those guys break hockey cards, and then I became good friends with them, and got to talk to them about my products, because they're opening case after case after case. So they have a good idea about, here's an improvement, or if there was a quality control issue, or the cards weren't conditioned well. A lot of great insight there. And then same thing, out of the box also, out of Canada, just some great guys. But yeah, we would hop into their chats on release night, and like I said, they'd be breaking 4, 5, 6 cases of our product, And it was great to hop into those live chats and, as they're breaking the product, being the creator of it, you get to see it firsthand, which on the spot live, which is awesome. But you also get to give a little background about where my head was at when I was creating that product and saying, hey, this was the thought process behind this design, or this is why you're seeing this jersey card or autograph card here. So a lot of great specifics came from that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge issue, or was maybe in the collectibles industry for a while, where too many products were being designed just for breakers.
Yeah.
Because I know you're talking about the price point of Pokemon boxes. It's gone the opposite in sports, where stuff keeps driving up and driving up.
So are you still seeing strong buy and demand in the sports card?
Yeah, like a perfect example.
Have you seen any retraces though? Because I have seen, like, just in the, I mean, again, please take it with a grain of salt, my knowledge of the sports card market versus you, but just going into Walmart and Target, I'm definitely seeing more product on the shelves. Now, I can't tell you set to set. Like, I could tell you every set for Pokemon, what the chase card is, what the, I don't know, speculative pull rates are for some of these cards, but for sports, I can't tell you, but I am seeing more product. So
yeah, no, there has been some more product made but there is a huge demand for it. So like that's why you're starting to see some sports products that are on the shelf now in stock, because they've kind of retraced their steps. I mean, Panini. Let's face it, they're the prime spot of retail, and they kind of went back, looked at their production runs and their retail SKUs, and it completely changed over the last 10 years or 2 years. Because what had happened was some of those mainstream hobby only products were getting eaten up so quickly that even the those higher end or mid high end collectors were like, I need to scratch my itch, so I'm going to go to retail. Screw it, I'm going to go after the retail and pump up, market manipulate those retail parallels.
So I think that's where the big difference is that like you said, that hobby product, or what we would call the more premium product. And like I said, with Pokemon, we see it to a very small extent, but I guess that's where the big difference would be, is that there is a lot more of that hobby based small print run. This stuff isn't going to be picked up at Walmart, Target type thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, it's that just people scratching their itch. And it was the same thing with Pokemon. We saw products that would never sell out, would sit on shelves for weeks or months or years, and you just always wondered if anybody would ever buy it. Then we started to see all this product get bought out for Pokemon. So I could definitely see how that would trickle into maybe the sports card market. Now, we talked about it a little bit when you went to the facilities and the giant printers, but what's your experience with like visiting these printer facilities, or at least understanding, did you guys own your own printer facilities, or was it all rented time?
So previously, before I even worked at Upper Deck, they had a much larger building. This was back in the heyday, the 90s into the early 2000s.
We call it the junk slab, or that's not junk slab. See, the junk wax era.
No,
so
I'm talking about mid to late 90s into the 2000s, where things were getting a little different. Technologies were, card technologies were kind of going in a little different direction, and it was more than just printing base cards by the millions. But at that time, back in that time, Upper Deck had a building which I believe did have a printer on site. But in my time there, when I started, the printing facility was not a part of that building. We did not own it. It was a different company.
In essentially,
yeah. And the way that works is you got to schedule it. So, it's pretty difficult. We had project managers and brand managers that, all of our product managers would queue up the products, design, get them all made and designed out. And then it was up to the project manager to try to fit it into a printer schedule. And some projects take longer than others. and some projects are more profitable than others, and you have to balance all that out, because if you have a product that's, you know, very profitable and marginally, you know, it's fairly easy to print, then you're going to want to get that job done and out the door, versus a product that's a little less margin, but and takes a little longer to print or get autographs back from. So there's a lot of scheduling that goes on like that. And then of course, you know, so there's a couple different printers throughout the country, main ones that are used, and it's not just one company. And for that matter, it's not just trading card companies. There's a lot of other printing that goes on there for like major industries. So, you know, in the grand scope of that, when you walk into, you know, a warehouse that's also doing like major toothpaste companies and like major tissue companies,
So it's
who
not
probably
even
have
just the sports card
no,
market or
not at
trading
all.
card
So they
market.
probably have like multi-million-dollar contracts with them. So like in the grand scheme of things, you know, the trading cards is probably a little lower on the totem pole. But
you know, it's funny you say that too about printer capability, because we've had two products come out in the last couple months, and they were, one of them was a Walmart exclusive, like a Charizard Reshiram box, and then a Pikachu Zephyron box for GameStop. And these were like store exclusive. You only go to Walmart and get it. You could only go to GameStop and get it. But they were definitely like older cards from what a different era of Pokemon. So like we call it the Sun and Moon era. Right now we're in the Sword and Shield. It's like the new block of sets. Like there's Sword and Shield, Base, Rebel Clash, and all the expansions. So these older cards just recently got released, and the thought process was, well, Pokemon probably had this in the background. But what you were just saying is that some products are more profitable. I'm thinking that these Walmart and GameStop exclusives were maybe just not as profitable, because you got to keep in mind that a Walmart exclusive or GameStop exclusive, their price point to get those exclusives and sell them are probably super low.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime, you know, and we did some stuff like that too, some incremental type stuff where, you know, you work directly with an organization on a small print run for something promotional. And those budgets usually are not very high. And believe it or not, and especially when, you know, it's frustrating to me anytime I see like any card, I don't care what card it is, go for under $1, sell for under $1, or even, you know, a 50-cent price tag at a trade show. Like, and I understand why it's priced that way, but it's frustrating to see after knowing what goes into the cost of making these cards. So yeah, it's. I'm sorry, I forgot where you're going with your question there.
No, I was just saying that what you were saying, that is a possible reason that for those Pokemon products that we saw late was that maybe the price point just wasn't worth it for Pokemon.
It's also like when you work on smaller projects like that, there's a lot of other aspects that go into it. It's not only the distribution, but it's also the you know, the packaging is a huge deal. I know, like anytime we did a packaging that was kind of out of the ordinary, it always threw a kink into the system where it would delay it, or we needed to go to a different vendor to get the packaging time, or whatever the situation may be. But all those little things add up and could delay the release. And, you know, I can't speak for the Pokemon factor, because there could also be a lot of timing issues in terms of when they wanted to release it. You know, you also have to look at that. Like, we would look at the calendar and say, okay, like, we can't release this high-end product and then a week later this high-end product and then a week later this high-end product. You kind of have to space out your products a little bit so that they don't, you know, you don't cannibalize your own market.
Yeah, create competition within your own products. So we have a couple people in the chat talking, and they're talking, you know, Pokemon is definitely like gambling, but a lot of my listeners are saying the sports card market is like real gambling, like the real high end. And I do want to go, I know we touched base on it a little bit, but I do want to talk about a little more is the price points for a lot of sports cards. Thousands of dollars for, I mean, throughout all the different sports card companies, I mean, we could be talking 5 figures for cards at release, right? Some of these one-on-ones.
Definitely. I mean, I can't think of really too many that are brand new out of the pack that are going for $1 million, but definitely in the 6 figures, absolutely. And it's pretty wild to see. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, you could have like a Jumpman Michael Jordan sign 1 of 1, and what is that right out of the pack? That could really, it's whatever the market's going to pay to a certain extent, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, so right now the sports, especially with sealed product, it's bananas. Like I love opening sealed product, and I'm looking at sealed product, and I'm like, don't feel comfortable paying these prices for them. And it's really kind of, I was kind of mentioning it before. It's kind of turned into, a breaker's world in that you're safer just going the breaker route and choosing your specific team and hoping you hit in that break versus spending. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, when I was really, when LeBron James was a rookie, that's when everything took fire for me. And my collecting base went to like an obsession and like huge passion.
But you were able to segue that obsession and that collecting base into
For
a
sure.
career.
Or
I think
yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
difference.
Absolutely. And I was very smart about how I approached that. But what I'm getting at there is back then, 03, 04, you had exquisite collection, first came out and it was $500 a pack. And that was at the time like, wow, $500 a pack, this is insane. And now that's the norm. That's like if you go get 500, like I'm not going to walk into a trading card shop and expect to buy a sealed box of any, Panini product or Tops or mostly Panini product for under $500 and get something decent. I mean, I was in Walmart the other day and I was just so hyped to finally see a full section that I grabbed a couple hanger boxes, and that me knowing what's in those hanger boxes, because I could put myself in the company's shoes and be like, all right, we're not going to put anything too good in these. I still bit, you know what I mean?
I think that's where you're still a collector at heart.
Yeah.
Where we talk about it on this channel, like there is a very different, between a collector and an investor. And my whole spiel and what I've said since day one of this channel is, in order to be successful in the Pokemon hobby, and I'm sure it's the same with sports, is, in my opinion, you really need to be a collector first. And the investing is just one of those like sweet added on bonuses that comes along with it. And I tell people all the time, if you want to go out and buy a pack and rip it, and hell, go buy a Chill and Rain booster box for $80. If you enjoy the pack opening experience, like there is always that factor in it. And it's not always, and I think sometimes we blur the line and we talk about the investability too much. And, for you doing the consultant, obviously when you're consultant, I think that's where the trickiest part is you are going to tell people how to spend their money. And for me, I always try to shy away from telling people, where to spend their money, because I could speculate and I could say, hey, listen, I think that this character from this set, I think from all the research that I've done online that this set was not as heavily produced as other sets around it. From what I've seen in my time in the hobby is that this card doesn't come up for sale a lot. But at the end of the day, I'm spending my own money to buy that card. I would always have a real hard time getting over that hurdle of telling somebody else everything I just said, but then really pushing them to buy that. Where it's easy when I do it on this channel, I could just be like, I like these price points, but if you can't afford this, don't buy it. Where at that point, they're going to ask you, what should I buy? I think that's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties back a little bit to what I said earlier, but I mean, if you want to, it's kind of two different worlds. I mean, you could be a collector, invest a little, but like, don't get into it just for investing unless you're well off,
I say that all the time. Yeah. Like Pokemon should not be your first investment.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, unless you have a few $100,000 that's just passive income chilling at the end of your year, I would relax on investing in like crazy hard in singles. I mean, it's tough. Like you have to either, again, you have to be willing to take the risk though too, right? So
It's that high risk gambling
it
sports card
is,
market.
it is, and there's certain within that though, like there's certain product levels where you could still satisfy that urge and get in on a $50 card, and it'll be $100 by the end of the year. So there's little stuff like that, but I mean, even me, like I just love opening sealed product, and me and my father, we love sitting down and open sealed product. So I'll go to the store knowing fair well that like that $500 box of football cards, I'm probably pulling maybe $150, $200 worth of cards out of it. But it's that pack opening experience, and I think that needs, and I think recently some companies have been doing a better job and making some specific products that people can do that with. But that, I think that needs to extend a little more. And I mean, some of these products that are entry level products are still, up in the $300-$400 a box.
Do you think that the sports card market, they've inadvertently like pushed away that average collector who might not have, hundreds of dollars to buy the newest, greatest product? And because for Pokemon, when it comes down to it, even the newest sets, you can still go pick up one single blister pack for $4. $4 is hopefully not make or break the bank for anyone in this hobby, but it's still accessible at a cheaper price. Sure, maybe you can't go out and get one of every product of that new release, whether it's ETBs or booster boxes or whatever, but you can still pick up a pack or two for $4 and that's one of the things I talk about a lot about Pokemon, especially on this channel, is for me, I think Pokemon is so enticing to so many newer collectors, or more importantly, people re-entering the hobby because there's low price points. Now, for the sports card market, do you feel they push that sort of collector away a little bit by making so many of the more premium sort of products?
Yes and no. I think like it's in some aspect, it's kind of what the collectors ask for, because anytime somebody opens a pack of cards and pulls a good rookie, they want that rookie card to be worth a lot of money. But they also want to hit that rookie card every time they open a pack. So it's kind of that double-edged sword. But I think they have made lower end sets to accommodate that to some degree. And again, I think the emergence of how many product lines are in the retail SKU definitely helps curb that some. But I think one big issue is, and once the beast started, it's tough to slow it down, was the fact that the hobby was largely consumed through group breakers, and it became a lot of, if that 50 or 60% of your product, and maybe that's too high of an evaluation, just kind of flying off the top of my head. But if you think that amount of your product is going to get bought and opened by group breakers, you're going to start to, over time, configure your products to tailor to that distribution channel. So that's why you may see, boxes stripped down to single packs or only 2 packs in a box, and it's a $500 box, because from the breaker's perspective,
so it's a lot of packaging for those 2 packs, and you don't get much.
And it's also the attention span for people. Like this is a different scenario because it's more informative, and it's a chat, and it's a YouTube channel. You could sit on here for an hour and a half, and keep people engaged in different ways.
It's not that easy.
No, trust me, I know it's not that easy, but it's a different format in the group breaking. Like, a lot of people pop in for their break and pop out. So like you may have a 10-minute attention span of somebody. So I think that's a lot of group breaking went in that direction, where you don't want to.
You're keeping this in mind the entire time during the process, like that you understand where your big clientele is. That, see,
sometimes yes, and sometimes in some products more so than others, for sure.
So one of the things I talk about for Pokemon, and it's hard, right? It's a tough argument to have, but when people say, well, where do you see the potential for the future growth of Pokemon? Pokemon, when you think about it, for sports, you have tons of different companies, whether it's Topps or Panini or Upper Deck or whoever. You have a lot of people making the same product. Pokemon is just the Pokemon International making it.
Mhm.
And when people say, well, how big can the hobby get? And I say, well, if you compare it to the sports card market, which Pokemon's never going to get to the sports card market, but even if we had a little bit more of a share than we actually do, like the sky's the limit for Pokemon, in my opinion. And it is a very different thought process. But I am just curious, like, if we can see all this hype with sports cards, where can we see like the real true ceiling for Pokemon being? And I don't know if is there like that internal competition between like an Upper Deck and Topps and Panini, and you're looking at their products and saying, how can we top this? How do we make ours better?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, some of it's a bitter rivalry, and some of it's just straight up admiration. I think when I first got to Upper Deck, I think there was kind of a standoffish of, I'm not a fan of Panini, I'm not a fan of Topps. We're gonna make something better, and but then when you start to see what everybody's coming out with, and I think within the last 3 to 5 years, especially, all the companies did a really good job of starting to do some healthy things for the hobby, because so much of it was contingent on autographs and memorabilia cards, that the demand for those watered down the market for it so much that the trading card market had to get back into using just cool technology and cool printing, substrates.
Yeah, like die cut cards. And all
Yeah,
that stuff.
just something different. And I think, Panini Prism, obviously, and their whole lineup of, parallels and stuff. I know O-Pee-Chee Platinum for hockey was always a really cool brand with a bunch of different parallels. But I mean, it's I think that's the direction stuff needs to go, and especially for Pokemon. I think the more that kind of stuff could be, incorporated, that's the growth for
So
Pokemon.
for Pokemon, what we're really seeing, there's always been a market for the sealed collector and the person that buys some packs, buys some booster box, keeps it sealed, whether it's for their collection or whatever. But recently, we've really seen that almost get to like a borderline unhealthy level for some products. But is there still that sealed collector in sports, or is it really just that singles market? Because I feel like for sports, you have a very finite time window. Like if you're opening the modern 2021 set, is going to be way more desirable than say the 2018 set. So do people have that sealed product mindset, or is it just a different mindset?
There's been every single mindset you can imagine in every angle you can imagine over the last couple of years. So there's actually been a huge play on sealed product. There's people who are going out there collecting sealed product, keeping it sealed, because I think they've seen what
Are prices rising?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at like some of the older basketball years, like Luka Doncic, rookie year sealed wax versus like this year's sealed wax, it has a higher price tag
just because of that chase. Yeah.
And I mean, some of it is the fact that I think, and this is a little bit of speculation, half knowledge, but there's definitely some holdback in some areas about when manufacturers and or distributors release some of their content. So like, they may release it in a wave or two and adjust their pricing along the way.
From a corporate standpoint, are you speculating on new players too?
What do you mean by that?
Well, when I say are you speculating on new players, are you saying
like prospecting?
Are you looking at prospects and saying,
absolutely,
we need to make this guy have a little bit more special of a card than this other guy?
Well, so
is that a thought process?
Absolutely, like 100%. We had we had a product, Goodwin Champions, and I remember it is really obscure. It's not geared towards sports. It's just geared towards entertainment of any kind. and we had musicians in it. We had race car drivers, boxers, all kinds of people in it. And we had one of my good buddies, Brian Schilling. He worked heavily on it, and he just sought out, like, he was up to date on people, sports, and prospecting, baseball prospects 2, 3, 4 years out, and he just picked names that by the time the product comes out, which is a year to a year and a half after it's made, now these people are starting to get some attention, and the way he was able to orchestrate it was unbelievable.
So he made a product that was supposed to be like for the everyday collector, and then it ended up having some crazy hits in it just because the people he speculated on ended up becoming
Absolutely.
big.
And a lot of what goes into that
Was that originally supposed to be a lower end product?
No, not at all. That's just his expertise was setting that card, situating that card set up in a way that happened,
Oh, so
like,
it was all
he would look
purpose.
at and say, okay, the release date for this product is 2000. Well, I know this baseball prospect, I think he's really good, but he's not going to be a rookie until 2021. We get him in this set early.
Gotcha.
We look like geniuses, but that's just his expertise because he was all about sports. He's into everything: sports, music, art, just culture in general. And he always just lined it up just so that the names that came out of it also happen to be in the spotlight, or kind of make sense at the time of the release. So that was always very cool. But yeah, even in hockey sets, or in football sets, baseball sets, basketball, I think you're seeing all companies do that now. They're trying to get to the earliest point of the person's career. So like I know at Upper Deck, one of the big things was the acquisition of the Canadian Hockey League license. Essentially, the Canadian Hockey League is like what they call junior level hockey. It's instead of playing college hockey and then going pro, you're playing junior level hockey in Canada and then going pro. So acquiring that CHL license gave Upper Deck the opportunity to get FaceTime and sign these guys to their first trading card contract 2 years earlier than their entry into the NHL. So it was a prospecting pool, and you've seen Panini do that with their outreach to baseball and as well as football. Like, they have NCAA products now. So, and that's only going to continue to expand with the whole NIL.
The license for NCAA.
Yeah,
everyone's getting their own endorsement deal.
Yeah.
Can you imagine when you're in college, if your or the guy across the hall was like some football player at some huge.
Unbelievable. And I mean, if you're man, woman, whatever you are, if you're an attractive athlete, even if it's like, you could be like a D3 attractive athlete,
you set your own.
You're getting a deal with somebody for something.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. That's cool. I mean, it's cool to see, but give Reggie Bush back his Heisman, man.
So let's pull yourself out of 2020, 2021 a little bit. Where do you see like the future trajectory of the hobby going? Do you see it staying at this, crazy speculative market? Everybody's ripping, flipping, trying to, and we will talk a little bit about the graded market, and because the graded market obviously is very high now. PSA very recently just put out their numbers for 2021. Over 7 million cards graded this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge amount of cards. And yeah, PSA, they're talking that, we want to get to 20 million cards a year graded. And everybody's like, well, that's too many cards if you look at PSA's entire history of grading cards. But when you look at what they were able to do this year, getting up to 7 million, I mean, how hard is it out of the realm of logistics and impossibility for them to realistically, increase that by 50% to get to 10 million by next year, or by the end of next year, 10 million graded in 2022, 2023 get into 13 million. And then you could be talking about a 3, 4, 5 year timeline to really truly get to that 20 million cards graded. So where do you see the market going?
Well, it's in the graded market you're talking?
Just the hobby in general.
Well, the hobby in itself, it's
And I think your hobby is different because
Mhm.
it's very, Pokemon is just Pokemon. And then for yours, there's hockey and soccer and
Yeah.
football,
Well, yeah, but
baseball.
even within that, I mean, there's still emerging markets like UFC and Formula One that are starting to emerge in normal trading cards, and I think that's kind of in a section of Pokemon. I think it's a not obviously not the same
No, no,
collectors, but
yeah.
it's a similar niche category. But what I can tell you is, I think you're gonna see the market is going to continue to stay strong in some aspects. Like what I think we're seeing now is that for the last 2 years we've been on this incredible high, and from that high there are how could I say pillars in the tide. And then once that tide comes back down, and it will, you're still going to have those cards that maintain that strong value and are still poking out of the water, that high pillar, and they're going to stay propped up there.
Do you think those
But the
cards will
rest
stay
of
high
those,
enough where it keeps product in the future where people are constantly chasing and trying to get back to those highs?
well, I think what's going to happen is as the market continues to ebb and flow, which it naturally is going to, it's going to go down and it's going to come back up. On that next come up, what does that tide look like? Is it going to be higher than that previous pillar? Is it going to be lower? But either way,
Do you think
that pillar kind of sets the price range for the rest of the cards that are in that tide, if you will.
now, do you think you need another? So for Pokemon, we really saw a Black Swan event, which was, everything that went on in 2020, everything shutting down, people staying at home, getting back in, and that, at least for Pokemon. Now, did you already see that uptrend happening for sports cards before that? Because for Pokemon, and we've talked about it on this channel before, Pokemon always had like a slow, gradual, rise. Now, the spike or the crazy peak we saw, nobody really expected. And like, so I'm very bullish when it comes to Pokemon. I believe in the long term of the hobby. Like, obviously, what this channel is, what I talk about, like, I can't not be bullish, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I could just come on here and be like, yeah, I'm going to sell my collection tomorrow because I'm out. Like, that's not me. But, like, I was able to really do good in this market. And I want to know, like, do you see that it being like enough now the market's going to cool down a little bit and go back to that slow uphill trajectory, or do you see it being more like up and downs?
I think it's going to have ups and downs to some degree, because I think what you're seeing now is in the last couple of years, the people that have come into the market that were already wealthy previously to coming in and have put a lot of money into large investments. The people that went out,
What's a large investment? Because for Pokemon,
anything that's six figures is a fairly hefty. I mean, even like some single cards lower than that, tens of thousands of
I
dollars,
feel like you
is
guys
still a
move
large
around
amount.
$3, $4, $5,000 cards like it's nothing.
It didn't used to be that way, but it's kind of it again. It's the rising tide, but I have to say there was definitely far fewer $10,000 cards, 5 years ago than there is now. I mean, perfect example, and this is a true story. Back in 2010, my father and I went to the National Sports Collectors Convention. We bought a ton of Panini product. We were Panini VIPs at their party and everything. It was a pretty awesome event. But in our purchases, we bought a case, which at the time, $500 a box, so $2,000 for the case, 4 boxes. National Treasures basketball. And out of that case, we pulled a Steph Curry rookie autograph patch card, numbered to 99. So I held on to it. It actually made its way into a couple card showcases thereafter, which I thankfully didn't sell for the measly price tag of $800. Some years later, I got it graded, came back at Gem Mint 9.5. The last one at auction sold for like $450,000. So I just, my father and I got lucky ripping wax, and we pulled a great card, and I was smart enough to hold on to that for 20 years or 10 years. But that those same boxes today, that case today is a $16,000 case. Not from that year. 2021's National Treasures is a $16,000 case. So the pricing has gone crazy, but I think things will continue to stay strong.
See, I just don't see I don't see how a market could continue that crazy uptrend, to have so many high-end cards, because there's just got to be a limit because when you get to a certain point, the collector base changes so much. Even in Pokemon, the collector base changes. Like when I talk to some people and I say a more lower end card, we could be talking PSA 10s for a lot of like hollows from sets like Aquapolis, which is like one of the middle set, we call it e-reader sets. A lot of PSA 10s in that set could be selling between, $500 to $1,500. And PSA 10 hollow, that's a chase card. There's some crystal cards in that set, but that's like a high end for our hobby is those cards. And yes, there's obviously the outliers, but there's a lot of PSA 10s that are the high end chase cards that are $1,000. Now, even in this hobby at that point, I see the collector base just evaporate so quickly. And I see a lot of people really pounding modern. Like they're willing to spend, $200 on a booster box, but they're not willing to give some more vintage card a shot at $200.
Yeah.
And I think that is dangerous in the long term, like the rarity scarcity factor of just the hobby as a whole. But I really struggle with the thought of our hobby ever getting to the point where we have as many high dollar amount collectors as sports. And now, sports, I think, something very important to talk about. It's a well more established hobby. Like, we talk about Pokemon. Really, it starts at 99 for English collectors. Sports cards, you could have collectors that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, are really, they're set. They've worked their lives. Now, I think we definitely have a new hobby. Our generation, a lot of the people listening to this are probably between that 26 to 36, that 10-year gap.
Yeah.
Sports cards, you're just encasing everything. Now, one of the things we talk about for like Pokemon is, well, what's the future of Pokemon? Will kids today want to collect cards in the future? And my answer to that is always yes. I think that and I think Pokemon is cross-generational the same way sports cards is. Sports cards can be cross-generational in the sense that your kids are probably going to watch baseball and their kids are probably going to watch baseball and they're going to be attached to those cards. Right. And when people say, well, do you think kids will ever want to go back and experience sets that they've never experienced? And I'm like, well, how many 30, 40-year-olds would go after a Mickey Mantle rookie card or a Babe Ruth or a Honus Wagner or Ty Cobb or Cy Young or you name the Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
Nobody was alive at buying Shoeless Joe Jackson Cracker Jack boxes in 1909, but yet that card has a high dollar amount.
Yeah.
So like that's where I'm hoping like Pokemon winds up in the future, is that a generation from now or kids today are still going to look at that base set Charizard and say, that's my Mickey Mantle.
Well, I'm glad you kind of went that direction, because I did want to say this about where I think the trading card market is going is, for me, especially when I look at some of these crazy price tags, and you're asking about how do rookies come out of the gate at six figures, I think there are certain kind of strongholds which then people kind of compare values to and then say, okay, well, if the LeBron card of this rookie year is worth this much, then this guy is like this times much less better than LeBron, so it's got to be worth like this. And you just do the compare game until you find a value. I think that's what a lot of people do. But I will say that I think we're on the verge of, and it's already kind of happening, a major shift towards vintage again, because especially in the sports card market, I think so many people, and especially some of that new money that's influxed in the last couple of years, are getting into the new products and are glamored by the high end graded products, are starting to realize the history of the hobby and history of historical values of some of the cards that have been important in the hobby, and they're starting to get on the vintage train. So in my opinion, I think you're going to start to see a huge shift in some of the vintage stuff as well. Hopefully that relates to Pokemon and people going back to that. I think we've had a lot of influencers over the last year too that have done a good job of creating content that does aim towards for that, that younger demographic. Because I mean, I'm not a huge TikToker, but there's a ton of teenagers that are, and they love Steve Aoki, I'm sure. So.
Yeah. For Pokemon, there's definitely a lot of those big Pokemon breaker channel. I don't call them breaker channels, but pack opening experience channels, and it's that exaggerated pack opening experience. You're pulling a card, you're jumping around, you're screaming, like something this channel will never be able to be. Like just I don't know.
Come on, let's hear that voice, John.
I don't know if you've ever actually like watched how many of my videos you've watched before you came on this channel, but trust me, it's not like the crazy hype.
It's pretty low.
But like one of my real strong hot takes too is, while I think Pokemon will have that upward trend, and this is where I probably differ with a lot of people with just my thought process, is I think in order for Pokemon to continue to grow, it needs to retrace. And the reason why I say it needs to retrace is because packs prices we saw right at release, in my opinion, those prices are unsustainable for the long-term growth of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I think new product needs to be cheap. And then as that product goes out of rotation, no longer is actively printed and isn't just on the market, and people can't just go to Walmart and Target to buy a pack. And it now becomes like a vintage, semi-vintage, or call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for my opinion, for Pokemon to grow, we needed to see this retrace, because a lot of it too, as bad as it is to say, is we need to keep people in this hobby, because it's the new collector that is going to be the future of this hobby. But we also had to shake out a lot of those collectors, those people that were doing what I consider irrational, purchases, things that are so out of the realm of what makes sense. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. That's why this channel will never be the biggest channel, because I'm never gonna
clickbait.
Clickbait. I did make a video once, and my title was clickbait.
Okay,
but
ill-worded comment.
But that's my feeling, is that you need to have some people leave the hobby to keep, and maybe this is cynical or but to keep that more organic growth, because I think the organic growth for the long term of the hobby is more important than the short term rip and flip hype. And now, this is where I was talking about too, is if you're already in the hobby, if you understand it and you see what's happening, and that's the big thing, is recognizing what was happening in the Pokemon hobby while it was happening.
Right.
Because if you recognized it, you were able to capitalize. And not only were you able to capitalize, you were able to liquidate, free up a lot of your collection and really hit those peaks. And no one's ever going to be able to hit the top of the market, and that they're never going to be able to time it so perfectly that they sell at the top and they buy in at the absolute bottom.
Oh no, I mean, buying in at the bottom, and especially in today's market, it's going to be very difficult to do. You have to have the tip. If we're talking sports, you just got to be really smart and have the tip on a guy and think he's going to pan out, and hope you buy the right product at the right time.
I mean, I got the tip on Charizard, Pikachu. Those,
just 12 years old.
Those guys are first round draft picks right there.
12 years.
And I think that's the thing. For my hobby, Pokemon, for me, listeners out there, while Pokemon it's two things. From the outside looking in, it looks like a very simple hobby, like a children game. There can't be that much speculation and stuff like that. And I think that's an illusion a lot of people have. But when you dive into it, Pokemon is actually way more complex than maybe people realize. When you get deep into sets and print runs and card quality, and when you talk about a set from 2007 and you're having a conversation of what the print quality was of that set versus PSA 10 population, stuff like this,
yeah, absolutely,
you really go a lot, you go out on a ledge a little bit. And a lot of the stuff in Pokemon too, even when it comes to vintage stuff, it's still speculation because we don't know true pull rates. Where sports, you understand the pull rates when you have a 1 in 99.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
That's right.
But
no, I actually got a, in terms of the pool rates and as far as kind of where the sports market trajected is, you look in 03, 04 back to LeBron James rookie year. You look at all the rookie cards, all the main base set rookie cards that LeBron James had. And I think there was like, I don't know, 20 some odd sets that Upper Deck put out of LeBron James. Only 4 of them featured base set autograph cards. And you look at today, in today's market, and, I don't know, maybe there's 30 or 40 NFL products or NBA products, and, probably more than half of them, or at least half of them, feature autographed rookie cards.
Yeah.
So it's like it's
so you went from a 1 out of
on
every 10 set to now like 1 out of every 2 set offering that.
It's just it's something that got inflated with the concept of what should be in a pack from collectors, and it kind of got away from the manufacturers for a long time. They started coming, kind of trying to bring it down, but it was pretty rough for a while.
It's interesting. So what are you doing now that you're not really working for Upper Deck? I know you're doing your consultant now, and this is something that's pretty awesome too, is that you're able to pretty much for right now go full time in the sports card market. And like, are you ever worried about like that risk? And I always talk about this too, and as much as like I maybe envy somebody that can quit their job and go full time and do their passion and do what they love, like for me, I'm always would be very like worried about that. Like, is there ever that like guy in the back of your head saying, this is a lot of money to spend on a card to speculate?
I mean, it's not so. It's not just my whole game plan isn't strictly around consulting and buying and selling cards. I do have an end game, a kind of thing going on in the background, which is my major play. But in the meantime, to kind of fund it, it's definitely scary. I mean, I have a lot of people in my ear, especially family, who don't necessarily understand the market, seeing some of these values, and they're just like, dude, get rid of it all and just be out. But I mean, I'm a firm believer in what I've learned over the last 20 plus years in the hobby and in the industry, and I just believe in my moves. And I think I think that's what people have to take away from that is you make your move, be confident in it. Worst case scenario, you got egg on your face at the end of the day, and it sucks. It sucks when you do, but it's awesome when you don't. And if you
were you able to take a lot out of the market profit wise 2021?
I did okay. I mean, my main thing was I liquidated a lot of like smaller and nickel and dime stuff, a few fairly decently priced cards, but like a lot of stuff that I didn't have big ties to and that I didn't think was going to continue to climb.
Yeah. So that was what I did with my collection and then I got to a point, so I had a lot of lower grade cards that maybe weren't really worth it to sell in the past, and then I had cards that were worth money, but I didn't have like an attachment to them. So a lot of my cards, a lot of my collection has come in big bulk purchases, which I think is very different than sports cards. Like, you're not picking up one of ones in bulk lots. Like, I think that, or binder collection, stuff like that, I think there's probably a little bit of a difference there. But I got to the point where I liquidated pretty much everything that I could sell and like not be heartbroken about. But then I got to a point where it was like, well, you kind of get spoiled a little bit with the money. And like, I'll be the first to say, like, I was spoiled a little bit. Like, I got some really good exit points and like I paid off a lot of stuff. Like, money I sold from cards went to paying off a lot of my house and paying off like no car payments, little things like that. Where when you do that and you put money towards your mortgage, you put money towards your card, like you don't get that money back to buy more cards.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that was where like it was like and I'm very sentimental. I'm a very emotional person just in general. So when I would sell some of these cards and like mail them out, or most of my high-end cards I sold at PWCC. We'll talk about PWCC a little bit. But a lot of these cards, it was, well, this is the last time I'll probably ever own this card, assuming that this card continues to go up over time. And a lot of my collections and a lot of my sales, the cards that I made the most money on were not cards from like base set. They weren't like PSA 8, hollows from unlimited sets. A lot of the profit I made were from, PSA 8, 9, 10s of a lot of these e-reader sets and Nintendo sets and Diamond and Pearl sets. A lot of these sets that there just wasn't a lot of cards out there on the market that existed in graded form.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Pokemon 2 is the difference too, is some of the cards that I had graded might have had low pops, but maybe a lot of people weren't grading those. And I think there's an ebb and flow to the Pokemon market where it takes people time to work your way through sets. Like imagine sports cards. If you had to work your way through every set from, Sweet Carolina cigarettes with TO9 or TO6s in it all the way up to mine, like you can never do it.
Right.
Pokemon, there's like 98 expansions. You spend $100 a month on 98 expansions. That's close to $10,000 a month. It's hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing I say is for one, you can't look back. Like if you make a deal, just go with it. And you gotta hope there's a little bit of card karma, is what I call it. And
well, that
you be
too.
good, you put some positive energy out into the card universe and hope it finds its way back. But I mean, like for a perfect story to go with this is I was at the national convention this year in Chicago, and with it being Chicago and the whole kind of summer that Michael Jordan had, and his kind of values were at an all-time high. I had a Jordan card, an autograph card that I had pulled Christmas morning in a pack, and I had held it ever since back in 2005. I've held it ever since. And I had it for some reason before I flew out to Chicago. I brought this card with me because I said, I don't know, it's in Chicago, market conditions are nice. Let me at least show it off. And I threw out a crazy price tag to this guy, and very, very nice guy, Justin at 610 Sports Cards, great guy, and it was good to meet a fellow, honest, good person in the hobby. And again, I threw out like a crazy price tag, and he was like, all right. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I just made a deal, but do I want to get rid of the card, And I did. I got rid of the card, and I've been thinking the last couple of months, especially with Christmas right around the corner, I'm like, man, do I really want that card back or what?
Well, that's the thing too. Is like I said, and a couple of the I guess you call them mistakes, is a few of like my childhood cards. Obviously, for the most part, Pokemon like well played. Like while we kept our cards in near mint condition, they weren't gem mint condition. So a lot of like my really, really early sales, and this is going back a few years now, were a lot of like my childhood cards. And, I would pay a lot of money to get those childhood cards back at this point. But I don't know. So
it's experience too. I mean, for every loss, it's an experience.
But yeah, and I look at it this way too, is, the way I was able to grow my collection, and you got to see a little bit of it before this video.
Yeah. And some of the gems in there,
Yeah.
Some of the goods.
I don't like to like talk about like my personal collection too much, just because like I think to a point I could sway the market in certain areas with certain cards, and I think it comes to a point too with certain cards is it is very easy to do that, hey, look at me thing, where it's like, look at this card, this is what I have, or hey, look, I have 4 of these cards that I acquired over the course of 5 years. And for some people to look at those, they might be like, well, when I look at the graded population of this card, and it only has a graded population of 40, and you have 5 of them or 4 of them, you own 1/10 of the entire graded population. Like, I don't want to sway cards negatively or positively because I'm a strong believer in no matter if the Pokemon market is at the highest of highs or the lowest of lows, I think there's money to be made in this hobby, no
Yeah.
matter what.
I don't think that's a bad thing though. Like I don't think you could influence the market and it could still be a positive thing, you know. Like I've seen it from my own perspective. When I was at Upper Deck, we would get employee exclusive cards, and these were limited to only the people that worked for the company. And in some cases, we would get some, you know, some pretty nice autograph cards. And like I remember, I have a really nice Serena Williams. Uh, it's like a not a jersey, but like her tennis uniform autograph card.
And this is an employee exclusive.
Employee exclusive, and you know, I just it was me looking at the market and saying, all right, it's Serena Williams. She's like one of the most prolific women to ever walk the planet at this point. She's a mammoth athlete. Like she's iconic for sports, so it only makes sense to try to get more. And I had worked with people in the building who didn't have any ties to sports, didn't care about sports or Serena Williams. And, you know, I bought up 5 or 6 more cards
Are you allowed
that day.
to sell those cards, those employee exclusives?
Those are the only cards we were allowed to sell when we were working. We weren't allowed to sell any other cards.
So do you still have cards you're not allowed to sell?
Oh, now that I'm no longer with Upper Deck, I'm free and clear to sell everything.
But while you were there, you couldn't sell them.
Correct.
Now, would people try to do that? And then, like, you would see this crazy card hit the market, and you're like, But I guess they're numbered, right? I'm guessing there's a way to track.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so we would get these cards, and everybody would get them all at the same time. So you would see immediately there was the same group of like 5 or 6 people that would put these cards on eBay. And some people were a little more intelligent than others, or maybe that's the wrong phrase, maybe just a little more in tune with what was happening in the hobby than others, and would put like a decent price tag on it. And then we would get the people that would put it on there for like $200. And it would just wreck everybody's day, you know? But
so you're trying to market manipulate behind the scenes.
No, I wasn't trying to market manipulate. I was actually, but in a different way, because we had people that didn't know anything and were undervaluing these cards. So I in turn would post mine or get mine graded and post mine for ridiculous value because I was trying to bring up the value. But yeah, I mean, I clearly remember, I distinctly remember Ben Simmons. We got a Ben Simmons autograph rookie card one year. And the way that I manipulated that market, because I had 3 or 4 of them.
Are these just like mid-year cards the company gives you? Or are these like a Christmas bonus gift?
It's quarterly. They would give it to us quarterly.
And you would get multiple or just usually one?
One, sometimes a couple, but usually just one. The last one I got before I left was the Joe Burrow autograph card. So that was pretty cool.
And these are just employee exclusive cards?
Yeah.
Now, for like Pokemon, once in a while we'll get like old collections from like old. So for Pokemon, it's like we call it the WotC era. So Wizard of the Coast, and if you're familiar with like Magic the Gathering, Magic the Gathering was owned by Wizard of the Coast, and then when the Pokemon IP came up, like available to be printed, Wizard of the Coast owned the trademark or owned the patent or trademark or whatever for trading cards. So they got like exclusive rights to Pokemon, and they were the ones that produced it. But the Wizard of the Coast employees, they had their own Wizard of the Coast store where you can go in and the company would issue them like employee credits. So you would get like $100 worth of credits that you could use at the company store and buy products. So you'll see some old Wizard of the Coast employees like liquidating some of these products now that Pokemon has gone nuts.
Yeah.
But then there's also some people who have got like full complete sets of cards, and some of these sets they got were like Crystal Guardians is like one of there's a guy, Leon Hardy's a content creator. He's big. He's purchased some of these from old
You're
employees.
going to a show, right?
I am going to a show.
Yeah, I saw that. This pop-up shop or something like that.
Dallas, Texas.
It's pretty cool. You need someone behind you, and then maybe we're gonna get some of those original packs or what?
Well, so you get an original pack. That was part of the price. So,
but you can buy some original ones too.
They haven't really said if you can buy it. I'm gonna have somebody on the channel tomorrow. His name is Basic Trainer. He's one of the mods in my chat. He's pretty well known just in the YouTube sphere, and he'll be on the channel tomorrow. We'll be talking, and he's also going to the pop shop. So sometimes it's cool to meet up with people that maybe only know him by like a name and not so much a face, or just have a conversation. And one of the things I like about Pokemon and just like what we're doing right now is I like talking cards.
Yeah.
Now, while I can't really talk too much about the sports aspect, I do love the conversation, especially for Pokemon, to be able to get that ability to go to the pop shop and for an entire day devote my time to talking Pokemon. And sometimes like when you go to work, the last thing you want to do when you come home from work is talk work. But for me, when I come home from work, I want to talk Pokemon. Like that's why this channel exists and stuff. And I know you had mentioned to me before we started filming that you're thinking about doing your own YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, we just so many different stories to tell, so much, opinions and insight I think I have to provide to the sports trading card market. But just, I mean, in working at, at one of the major companies, and I talked to one of the guys who formerly was a designer at Upper Deck as well. I talked to him the other day, and we talked about doing some like behind the design type stuff where we go into a little more detail about, what I was thinking and what he was thinking when we made those cards. But yeah, I mean, it's stuff like this that's going to continue to fuel the hobby. And, I think now, especially that there's legitimate investment, those investors are going to look to back their investment and keep it going strong. So you're going to continue to see more social outlets like this, keep paving the way for what's I think like a whole social, almost like an ESPN for trading cards. I think eventually we're going to get to that. But actually, one of the things so I have a concept for a digital platform. I've had it for quite some time, and it's kind of the back end thing that I'm going to be pitching to hopefully some major card companies in the future. But a lot of it was, or I shouldn't say a lot of it, a part of it, an aspect of it that collectors could use was inspired by Pokemon Go. And the whole Pokemon Go app, I thought it was a really brilliant way to keep people engaged. And I always thought it wouldn't have been an amazing tool to use in conjunction with the trading cards.
And Pokemon did do that a long time ago. So there are the e-reader sets, and now there were e-reader adapters you could put on Game Boys and like swipe cards, and you'd either get a character or special items or special borders or stuff like that.
So there's a couple concepts with that, which I think, especially now with some of the more digitized components and NFTs and things like that, I think there's a lot of ground for Pokemon to grow with using stuff like that. And I really hope I get the opportunity to implement my platform somewhere, and I think it could be exciting for the distribution of
if that ever kicks off, you're more than welcome back on the channel. But
we'll definitely talk about it.
I do want to open up a little bit. So I haven't really, it's hard to follow the chat, but if any of you guys have had any questions that you want answered, you could ask JT or you could ask me. Definitely now is your chance to ask some of those questions, because I think when it comes to like the insight you have from the sports card market and really working behind the scenes, I think if anybody has those questions, now is definitely the chance. But just real quick before we do answer those, we'll let give people a little bit of time to answer those questions. Do you collect anything besides sports cards, or is that really just your only thing you're at right now?
Mainly sports cards. I mean, to be honest, I haven't even bought or went out collected. I think like the Pittsburgh Steelers rookie Najee Harris, big fan of him. Bought a few of his cards, but I haven't been buying a lot lately. I've been just kind of curating my collection,
and I wasn't. And it's funny you say that because I was not buying for a while. I was buying sporadically, but like not going stupid.
Yeah. But I think my interest in terms of, because I've been looking at like so many.
Do you think price memory hurts you? Because I feel price memory hurt me really bad. Like last year and this year, price memory of where I think things should have been selling at or what things were selling at. I feel like for a point, price memory ended up being like a good thing because price memory saved me from doing some stupid purchases.
For sure.
But with that price memory, like I might have missed some good deals too, because when we come on this channel and I say, careful, Pokemon is a bubble and it might pop. We don't know when it's going to pop, but it looks like it's going to be popped. Now, I could have been wrong. Like it could have kept going up, or the bubble could have sustained for way longer than we thought the bubble was going to go on for a year or two, and then when Pokemon printers meet back up and all this stuff. But again, that even calling it a bubble is speculating. Like you don't know where the top is, if that makes any sense.
You don't know the timeline for sure. It's definitely a fluctuating timeline. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. See a lot of familiar names in the chat though. There's not that many chats or really questions. And if I'm missing any of the questions, you guys just let me know. But I think that's pretty much gonna wrap up this chat though. But we chatted for a good hour and 37 minutes. And I want to, just say thank you, and for all my listeners out there too, say thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Hopefully, do it again soon,
and hopefully we could sway in the future, and you could start moving to Pokemon and not just sports cards.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind as long as there's an investment to be made. I'm down. I have to hit up that pop-up shop, man. Maybe I'll give you some money to get me some.
I think it's gonna be a lot harder than that. But we do have a question real quick.
Yeah, of course.
So question, Pokemon Japan gets a lot of exclusive promo cards partnering up with companies. Is it Pokemon and the Sports Club World collab something possible? Do you ever see that?
Yes, to a degree. I mean, I think it's from a licensing perspective is your biggest hurdle, but I think the biggest crossover would be for like artwork and just overall the look of the card. I think if you look to some of the sports cards that have come out over the last few years, they've pulled from different different sources to kind of emulate after the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has played its way into the sports world and kind of make it an animated type of card for athletes. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there is some crossover. I think there would be an awesome crossover for the technology that's used in some of the sports cards. I mean, I don't know if anybody's familiar with like Black Diamond. Upper Deck actually recently came out with a Marvel Black Diamond, and they put diamonds in the cards. And for me, it's like a thicker stock card with diamonds embedded within it. And for me, like if I'm Pokemon, why not come out with a limited edition set of diamonds? But I know there's all kinds of other stuff. I saw like glass sculptures randomly, packaged glass sculptures.
So I'm like on the fence about those real super specialized cards, but Pokemon very recently. So there's always been like this really niche secondary market for metal cards,
Yeah.
and a lot of like the metal cards were more just, artist inspired artwork. And yeah, there were like Charizard cards and stuff, and they would sell for like $20 to $30, and there was always like this little market. Then with Pokemon's most recent product, the Celebrations Ultra Premium Collection, they had a metal Charizard and Pikachu, both from the original base set artwork,
Okay.
but they were like a higher quality metal card. And the Pokemon market, even though these existed on the secondary market as like proxy cards, the market just lost its mind over that stuff.
Yeah. And, we've done that. The trading card market continues to do that. If you take a look at Topps Baseball, they just celebrated like their 70th year or something like that. And I believe it was their 70th year. And they took sets from all 70 years and put new imagery in those same designs. So, it's always kind of going back to the well and saying, oh, well, this design was popular, so let's reformat it. And that could absolutely be done. I mean, like, I don't know for sure, but how cool does a Charizard exist that's on like acetate, that clear substrate?
No,
That would be
not that I could think of.
unbelievable. Imagine, I personally,
like we have some,
would
like
blow my
there are
mind, but
some older cards that are the lenticular printing,
lenticulars, yeah.
like that 3D printing, where
Yeah.
there are some like Pokemon Flips, that's a great example, but they weren't really trading cards. They were more just like a specialty novelty
Yeah.
product. But we do have one question from Basic Trainer. He said, what are your thoughts on number cards in sports? Too many, not enough? And should Pokemon start adding numbers cards to their sets? So I'll answer the second part of whether I think Pokemon should number sets, but I think the first part of that question is great, because for sports cards, it's almost as if every card is numbered now. Where do you think that that number, that artificial scarcity to those cards, has gotten to a point where you could pull a 1 out of 25 and it still has no value to it?
So in the sports card world, it's and I know, like, when I was building cards, my boss and we kind of had a philosophy in terms of if it was making the overall value of the card, if it was a detriment or a benefit. And there's a lot of aspects that play into that. And I think what's happened, especially if you look to a lot of what Panini's done, and a lot of their parallels, is they're just trying to fill content and create hits. So they just run as many parallels as they can, number it to whatever they need to. And another aspect to that
is that detrimental though? Like just having
absolutely, it can be. I mean, sure, in some sets you get some collectors that want to go collect every single parallel, but in some cases it just kind of fatigues the collector, and that could very quickly kind of devalue the entire run of all the rookie cards, because in some sets people will just say, okay, I don't really care whether it's the regular or the parallel. It's just there's too many rookie cards across the board. It doesn't have big value. But another thing I think you've seen a lot is the emergence of an unbelievable amount of one-on-ones. It seems like every single insert or card has a parallel that goes to one-on-one. And again, that's kind of, it goes back to, I don't want to say it goes back to the whole breaker mentality, but it goes back to the printing, actually, a lot of it, because when you print cards, right, like it's done in 100 up sheets. Most of the time it could be in different forms, and what I mean by 100 up sheets is you get 100 cards of the same design but with different pictures, 100 different players. And it's much easier to say, okay, we're going to use that and just do different color parallels. It's more cost effective than to say, okay, we're going to do a completely different design and make a bunch of different inserts. So with that, to break that up and have a less monotonous effect on what the collector's seeing when they flip through the cards. You see different colors, but you also see numbering to try to incentivize people that or have a perception of higher value. But yeah, it works both ways. I think there's some avenues where it's good. I think there's some avenues where it's just, it's too much.
Yeah. And so to the second part of that question is now, do I think we should have numbered card in Pokemon? And my initial response to that would be no. And the reason why is because for Pokemon, I don't know how sports is, but for Pokemon, there's a lot of like completionists, people that are big set collectors. They want to literally got to catch them all, like got to get one of each card. Now, Pokemon recently, and this is going back to like as far as like Cosmic Eclipse and some other sets, but these sets are becoming really big. And, you're talking hundreds of cards and chases in Pokemon, while in the past, chases were not that hard. When we talk about like a set maybe you're familiar with is like base set from 99, maybe when you were still collecting Pokemon, you had 15 hollows that you could pull from a booster box, or 16 hollows total, but one of them came from a 2-player starter deck. There was 12 hollows per booster box. So realistically, if you bought 2 booster boxes, you can complete the entire set and then have a lot of duplicates of these hollows in theory.
Yeah.
But now the pull rates for some of these cards are like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 500 packs. Now, a booster box is 36 packs, so you have to, and at $100 a booster box, that's a lot of money to open 1,000 packs.
Yeah.
Now, for that Pokemon set collector, I gotta catch them all mentality, to start to do the numbered cards, that 1 out of 25, 1 out of 30, you're gonna really hurt that entire, collector base. And that's where my fear is. And then my fear is that eventually the market gets to the point where you were talking about, where everything is a 1 out of 1.
Yeah.
Everything's a 1 out of 25. And I'm just afraid that once you go down that path, you can never come back from it.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that's true. And especially
think if they ever just, for modern sports card, if they just came out with a set that was 100 base set, like some old baseball card set from like 1988, where it was just no special cards, every card was the same, they're just part of the basic set. Would people want to collect that? That would probably be like the lowest end product out there.
I don't know. I mean, so to give you, for instance, we have, like, if you look at a lot of sets usually have a key card or a key rookie card within that line. And let's say, for instance, an autograph, like Ultimate Collection autograph rookie card, it's always traditionally been numbered to 99. And you put that cadence out there over time, and it kind of develops a baseline for collectors to gravitate towards and say, okay, this product line keeps coming out with this limited autograph rookie card. And then it kind of builds up a perceived value over time. And that kind of gives helps a product with identity. It's an identity issue. And then, that has a whole effect on how that product performs in the market. So, I mean, if someone at Pokemon said, hey, like, what's an underperforming set in Pokemon? I'm not sure, but whatever that set may be, we're going to take that underperforming set or blaster box or whatever, and we're going to introduce a couple of these specially numbered cards. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, to try to incentivize collectors, especially around some of those underperforming products, because the last thing you want to see as a collector too is when products come out of the gate and then they tank in value, even the sealed stuff.
Well, we're seeing that happen right now in Pokemon. Is like our most recent set, which is Fusion Strike. And I wouldn't really say prices have tanked. I think the problem is that people got really spoiled, really greedy in 2020, 2021, where everything just went to the moon right at release. So really, Fusion Strike prices didn't tank historically.
It's where it should be.
It's where it should be. And I think just that thought has really shook out a lot of people.
But now that's the thing though, now you also have to deliver, and you have to continue giving collectors something to keep chasing. So I don't think necessarily it would be a terrible thing to start numbering some stuff, but it would have to be strategic, and it would have to be, it's something that you would have to talk about with people like yourself, or some of these breakers break a lot of Pokemon product, to say, hey, how does it work, and what's the best product for it, and how do we implement it? And to that effect, I think some sports companies have been trying to pull back on it too. I know, like I got in on a group break a few months back for Panini Black Football, and one of the big chase cards in that is like, I think it's called like a midnight or midnight parallel or something like that. And all it is the background on the card has like this crazy night moon, and the card's black and white. It's not numbered. It's just a crazy high insertion rate. And those cards actually have huge value. So it also it plays into a lot of the company's ability to, like, what we said very early on in this, is kind of teasing some stuff here and there and getting hype around the right stuff. If that means, I mean, if Pokemon needs to turn to numbered cards to do that, maybe they need to. But
You know, it is, so it's sometimes when I listen, like it is tough because like for my thought process of pack breakers, I am coming from a very different like mindset where I think for sports cards, and I guess you can make the same argument for vintage Pokemon, is that sports cards, the pack prices are so high, like you can't buy a sealed case because you could be talking tens of thousands of dollars, right? So in order to even experience that product at a low end, and one pack is $500, I think maybe that is where like the Pokemon market for more the vintage packs are at that high. But like I do always struggle because for me, whenever a pack breaker is opening a vintage product, the packs are always so hyper inflated. It's like, please don't pay this. Now, maybe that is the difference. Are there still that inflated prices for sports where the pack breaker is making a ton of money? Or is it a little more reasonable? Because that's where I just can't get past that.
I mean, I don't think breakers are doing very well for themselves now because of how many people are in the hobby. But like,
I'm just an
there's
anti-breaker.
there's so much, they do a lot of work. I mean, behind the scenes, like right out of the gate, you say, okay, the packaging, and we gotta go through all the packaging, take the cards out, and throw all that packaging out. But it's also like the shipping and handling, the shipping of all that stuff to all those different people. But it's also the logistics that goes into assigning value to how much stuff costs, and how you're going to price your stuff out, and price out a certain product. There is a pretty interesting matrix that goes into that, especially for sports. I mean, essentially, you take like the NHL has 32 teams, so a breaker has to say, okay, yeah, I have individual team spots, but then they also have to look at the product and say, well, the Boston Bruins only have, three real good cards in this whole set. So the price tag for that spot shouldn't be super high. So there's a logistical kind of price tag that they have to set for their customers, because there's an expectation of what's going to come out of that pack, or what's going to come out of that
I
case.
can understand that, and that's where I would. So, and I think this is what we talked about a little bit, is that for me, like when people are like, "Well, do you collect sports?" and I tell them, I'm like, "No," and the reason why is because I just wouldn't be able to navigate sports. Where
I think you would a little better than you might think you would, because it's, and again, it's not always about hitting a home run every time. It's going with your gut. And if you know that you have a good read for talent, pick 10 guys, and maybe you strike out on 6 of them. But if you hit on 4 of them, their values are going to carry
that
those
high
6
risk
guys. You know
sports
what I
card
mean?
gambling.
But it's also, the other aspect too is being smart enough to go for certain products, like, or at certain rookie years. Like, this is an unbelievable rookie year for football cards. So you
When
you
you
could have a pretty good, you
when
know,
you do consultant, and I'm guessing anytime you're doing consultant, a lot of people are probably interested in modern, right? I'm guessing that's where a lot of it is. Do you get a lot of like the vintage questions?
there's a lot of vintage around, especially, you know, some older people, you know, estates and just people that are not as in tune with what's happening still have all this vintage stuff. So I think there has been a huge kind of, you know, cleaning out my closet mentality for the, especially with everybody in lockdown in a lot of places
Same
for the
thing
last
happened with
couple of
Pokemon,
years.
yeah.
You know, people just came out of the woodwork with all this stuff, and that some of that is still emerging. But I everyone's always invested in or always interested in what's hot, what's new. And I try, the difficulty with that is tempering their expectations for return, you know, because yeah, they could have six-figure price tags, but the jump-in point is way higher than what it was
Yeah.
5, 10 years ago. So, you know, everyone looks at, you know, the LeBron James cards and says, oh, that card, it's a $10,000 or $10,000, 10,000 times, you know, increase from what it was in his rookie year. You know, you got a card going for 300, now it's a $3 million card. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but that jump now with modern day stuff, it's not as huge. You know, the high part is high, but the entry level is
I
still
feel
high,
like
so.
what's happening with modern sports is that a lot of the sports prices is already already a speculative price.
For
like
sure.
You're already building in speculative, and I think that's a problem we saw with Pokemon too. Is in the Pokemon market we saw a lot of like speculative price being built in right at release and saying where. And we talk about fundamentals and stuff too, and I guess fundamentals, the term itself, when you talk about a hobby, is very subjective to begin with. But it was like, okay, I understand you want to buy this brand new card, but it's, hold on, I have to sneeze every time I do a video. I didn't.
It's good luck.
It's good luck. But you know, it's like that built-in speculation price for Pokemon, and I think that's dangerous in the short term, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you see that where prices right at release for some of these products are crazy high, and then
absolutely
they just trace down, and then
even to the point where like we've seen influential people in the hobby put out straight up bounties on certain cards before the product is released, and that's good and bad. I mean, in the sports card world, like I know, for instance, I created a product called Ingrained. First time it was ever, but I was tasked with creating a new brand in Ingrained hockey, and we had these really cool pieces. On the hockey stick, they have the nameplate of the player up on the shaft. So we had these really cool cards where it was two nameplates in a single card. And the first year we made it,
it's got to be a heavy card, right?
It's got some weight to it. But the first year we made it, I want to say the big card was like Wayne Gretzky, Gordie Howe, 101. So like serious card.
I don't even know sports cards. I can tell you that's an expensive card.
Yeah, it was a serious card, and the prominent collector who also had a social media following, you know, he put out a bounty on the card, and I forget exactly what the price tag was, but he said, I'll give, you know, 10, 15, 20, whatever the price tag was, $1,000 for, you know, for the sale of this card. Whoever pulls it, I'll pay on the spot for this card. And having that soundbite out there for that product helped it, you know, like trying to launch a new brand. That's having stuff like that is always helpful, for sure. In terms of, you know, cards fresh out of the gate into an entire year's worth of products, yeah, it kind of sets certain expectations up with, and then that kind of dictates, you know, how collectors are going to act, because you know that, okay, the high end rookie card, there's only 99 of them, and we know who's going to, there's only like, you know, how many people could actually afford that card. You know what I mean? So And then it's on the collector of being strategic to say, hey, I'm going in on that one. I'm going in on the high end card. Just I'm buying one rookie card of this guy, and it's the high end.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to buy 30 of his low end cards.
Yeah.
You know, it's which avenue do you want to go? How much risk do you want to take?
Yeah.
And right now, it's high risk,
high
reward.
Yeah, so high risk is the key.
High risk, high reward, higher risk.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. It's a tough one for sure.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody out there for tuning in. This is definitely a very different type of video than I normally do on this channel, and a very niche, definitely more of a crossover of the sports. But I just wanted to pick somebody's brain and get their insight, because while Pokemon and trading cards might seem similar from the outside looking in, as well as I do that they are very inherently different. But again, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. And you got any final words? I know I have your Instagram in the description of this video, so if you guys want to reach out to JT for any reason, ask him any questions, Instagram, would you say that's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, right now, hopefully I'll be promoting myself to some further platforms, Twitter, YouTube, but right now, Instagram, so you can find me, Straws30. Hopefully some more content going on there. I talked to John a little bit about design, behind the design type of talks, so hopefully have some cool people on and, some market knowledge on sports. So if you guys are looking to get into sports or general interest in sports, check me out.
All right, sounds good, guys, and I appreciate every single one of you tuning in. I'll catch you on the next video.